Well, welcome to Cultivating and Sustaining Trust to Maximize Outcomes. Today is topic 4 of our entire series of What is Virtual Leadership, where we have been exploring the 5 core skills of remote leadership. And who are we? We are the Remote Leader Project, and we create on-demand online courses that can be taken both individually and placed within your organization's LMS, as well as offering group coaching to be able to teach virtual leadership skills like what we're exploring today, because the ability to lead a dispersed team requires some nuance and a little bit of difference in your leadership, and we help people evolve what they currently know as themselves as a leader to be able to exist in our virtual space. So my name is Allison St. John, and we have Christina Rowe here with us as well. We are the co-founders of the Remote Leader Project that we created years ago, well before a pandemic and the coronavirus affected us. And so we've been on a mission to be able to support remote work for a long time now, and are rallying to our world need right now to be able to really and truly help folks thrive in remote work. Now, what to expect today? We teach all of our content on a micro-learning approach. And what does that mean? It's bite-sized content because we have a lot to do. We have businesses to run and teams to lead, and you can only retain so much information. So we're going to give you a bite-sized piece of information with time to also be able to reflect and apply it directly into your universe, and then also have the opportunity to share with each other to be able to learn from peers and what they're doing in their various industries, because we have folks within our remote leader community, everything from food distribution to event planning to oil and gas to marketing, and no matter the industry, the need to be able to lead well in remote space remains the same. Now, this promise is, I'm going to uphold this promise to micro learn with today's topic, but it was tricky, I have to be honest. Trust is a huge topic. And so we are going to focus in on one particular area with the intent, hopefully, that it's going to be something that can really sit at the foundation of your behavior as a leader, so that you can bring trust and embed it into your team culture so that you can maximize the outcome. So let's go ahead and get started. And first, I want to ask you, though, in chat, go ahead and find your keyboard. What happens when there is a lack of trust in the workplace?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of fear and uncertainty develops across teams, across departments. The whole organization can be affected when there's not trust. And also that people really hold back. They don't bring their full set of skills or their best self to the workplace. And that's a pretty common one that we see often, because it really brings a fear of, if we can't trust people, we're afraid to be our full selves because of judgment or bad behavior that's directed at us. And so we kind of go into that place where we're sheltering and protecting ourselves. And misuse of resources, that's a great one. Double checking of work or rework, a lot of that micromanaging comes up when there's mistrust. That's great.
Yeah, so it's so important to be able to understand this topic of trust, because it is crucial in remote work. I mean, you've already experienced it and shared some things of what happens when it's missing, but oftentimes people are already stepping into remote work from the outset with a mindset of mistrust, because they think, if I can't see my people and what they're working on, then I don't trust them. If I can't see them at their desk, if I can't see exactly what the projects are that they're working on, then we're already undermining our working space here. So this is a common fear that does come, and that's why it's so important to understand that if that is a common trap that you can find yourself into, how do we get out of it? And also, though, trust is so critical, whether it's a dispersed team or someone who is physically close together, purely by the data. Gallup has done years of research on trust, and two of the authors, Adam Hickman and Tonya Fredstrom, said it best, and this is a quote directly from them: "Trust in the workplace increases speed and efficiency, and ultimately performance." And so, Noah, when you shared about the concept of lacking of trust can cause a misuse of resources, double checking of work, rework, case in point, inefficient, slow speeds, and ultimately performance is being as negatively effective. So understanding this, we want to be able to, again, give you a focused area of how you can master trust, cultivate it within your team, and sustain it over the long term so that it's within your culture. So now thinking about you and your specific team, I want you to describe your current state of your team culture and all of its reality, good and bad. What is the trust in your team culture? I see some grimaces that maybe that's not so great, but again, just want to catch a moment of reality. What is trust today in your team culture?
That's great. We're hearing things about um, that some pieces of the trust have been almost improved by going through coronavirus and people having to realize they're in it together and they have to work on it. The other piece is also feeling like they have to trust other people because you don't have uh, the the bandwidth to do all the work yourself. So it kind of forces your hand, which doesn't sound like it's, oh yeah, I trust them implicitly. There seems to be some doubt feeling in there. And then um, some people are saying, we're right in the middle. We're not the most, high trust environment. It's somewhere kind of in the middle, and there's some room for growth. So, really, today, seeing a lot more uncertainty and lack of communications. And we've actually kind of like lost some empathy moving into this and moving with the COVID pieces of it. And that definitely creates complications for our trust along the way, too. And that's where we see teams either really lean into the trust they have and invest deeply in continuing to build that trust, which helps them be more successful, or they kind of lean out and start guarding themselves or take extra space when something is really interruptive.
So here we have in one simple question, when we asked about your team culture, we just got complexity, such nuance of trust, how it's been evolving, how it was before, what it is today, all because of the reaction to environments and things of that nature. Trust is complex, and why it's so important to be able to really step into it and learn as much as we can. So as we move forward today in particular, I wanted to also just bring up, what is the textbook definition of trust and what does that mean for us to be thinking about as leaders? So from a textbook perspective, directly from Oxford Dictionary, it's a firm belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability, or strength of someone or something. So keeping that in mind, though, we've pulled some information from a psychologist who was able to tell us a little bit more that this wasn't just the only definition.
What we see is that trust is an emotional brain state, not just an expectation of behavior. And for those of you who joined us last week, we really dove into expectations and boundaries and how you set those and how you hold them in place. And we have that recording on the website if you want to refer back to it. But sometimes we get stuck there with trust, that the only thing is fulfilling those particular expectations and boundaries. And they're definitely a huge element of it. But we actually have to address the fact that trust comes with a huge emotional component for the brain, that those emotional components also have to do with taking the time to invest in building trust. And we talked about previously the needs in the workplace that need to be met, that are, and the most common ones, the most important ones to people, are to be seen, heard, valued, and safe. And we see safe and also being heard or feeling valued coming up really strong for a lot of people in a time when we can't guarantee safety in a health way. But there's also psychological safety, job security, and then the physical safety of having the supplies that you need in order to show up for your job, whether that's internet or computer, those kinds of tech things. Helping to support those pieces as a leader really matters. And what we find is that when we, as leaders or managers, really invest in making that emotional commitment and building up those relationships by paying attention to making our team members feel seen, heard, valued, and safe, we see huge bumps in higher productivity and a great deal less distraction. And that less distraction element is priceless right now. Right now, there are so many distractions in the world. A lot of you may be homeschooling kids at the same time that you're trying to work a full-time job. And so those pieces are very, very ever present distractions, but there's also an element of emotional distraction, of worry. And if you have those workplace needs unmet, it starts to bring doubt and distrust into the work that you're doing. And it creates an additional kind of distraction that we don't want entering into our team environments. And when we talk about trust, there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities to build trust together. And we often talk about one side or the other, the trust of fulfilling certain expectations and boundaries. And we forget that there's actually a way to bring balance by looking at what are the processes and what are the people, right? Bringing those together to look at, maybe we pull certain reports on a certain day, and that actually builds our trust in the people on our teams because they're consistent and they're showing up and we don't have to worry about it. And it's one thing that we're not having to think about and do each time. And then the people piece of, is it the interaction that you've built with them? Is there a transaction that happens that they do and they're really mindful of owning it? And that helps you build trust in them. And it goes both ways, you showing up for them and them showing up for you. Here's one of the opportunities people often miss is that they often miss that creating agreed upon processes actually helps facilitate building trust. Because if you can both build the same expectation and fulfill your roles in it, it brings a lot of comfort, which helps to build that emotional trust because people feel valued for knowing what their role is within that work.
So let's go ahead and explore a couple of daily actions now that you can take as a leader to be able to build and sustain trust. And in order to address our first action that you can take, I want to ask you about a reaction to what we're about to say. So go ahead and find the chat and the keyboard. And when I tell you that your job as a leader is to take an action to let mistakes happen, how would you react to that?
A lot of times we have kind of a knee-jerk reaction of people not wanting to allow any kind of mistake to happen or anything that feels like a failure, especially when there's the risk of it could end up being client facing. But the nice thing to remember is clients know you're human too, right? I'm not saying that you want to make huge mistakes that are client facing. If we can keep them from not being client facing, that's great. If we can catch them and make them a learning opportunity, that's what we want to see most. So, what does letting mistakes happen look like? It looks like giving people the space to fulfill what their role is, what their needs are. It means trying to learn. The learning process of actually being able to develop so that you're in a position where you could fail because you're taking on something new is something that's really important to offer individuals. And take that big step back to not get tempted into micromanaging when you get nervous that somebody is honing a skill and maybe that level of skill isn't quite at where your level of skill is, and give them that space. They're responsible and going to probably feel bad if there's a mistake too, but that's a great element to be embedding into your culture, is to take the chance that those mistakes are there and that it's something you work on together to move forward from it, that you use that as that learning experience, because it's also a great learning experience for the leaders and managers to notice and take note of, how does this person learn well? Did I set them up for success? How can I use this to set them up for success in the future? Those spaces and opportunities to really build trust by being in it together are crucial in order to create the longer lasting deep trust of demonstrating that you're going to find a way through it together.
And so indeed, this is about now being a leader is I'm understanding all the nuances of trust and that I'm allowing mistakes to happen within parameters. And this next step, though, that as a leader I need to take is to be sure that my direct reports my teammates know that we're going to build a solution together. And this is where that you are a part of the learning process, that you are part of the mistake process that just occurred, because you too may also make mistakes one day, in which case then it needs to be that collaborative. So when you are engaging in conversations in particular, to really show the space that you are in it together with your teammates, be authentic. Be authentically you. Most individuals, when they do make a mistake, are going to feel remorse. They didn't intentionally do it. So be authentic, have that empathy to be able to engage with them of where they're feeling and that occurred. And it's important for you as a leader to also then share your own thought process, your perspective, and your emotions productively, to be able to create a more trusting environment if you can acknowledge what it is that you're thinking about in this situation. Ask for input, ask for their buy-in. What do you think you could have done differently? What can we do to be able to make sure that this mistake doesn't happen again? Which ultimately leads to engage in feedback regularly to support the learning process. Now, we're going to go ahead here and give the chance for everyone to go to breakouts with a few individuals, because we'd like for you to be able to share now specifically for your situation and your team, what makes it difficult or easy to let mistakes happen, and where do you need to build more trust on your team, and how will you do it?
That's great. Group 2, Scott, would you want to come on and unmute and share with us?
Sure. I think Noah had a lot of good ideas, things that he's doing. He's in a sensitive area in security, but I'll let Noah speak as well. But from my side, I think some of the things that the safety issue, the psychological safety, is becoming a buzz term right now, and I think I'm hearing people play that more and more and more in discussions. And I think it's starting to reshape some culture around us. Um, and so I think some of the techniques, some of the things that are being done now are, these virtual coffee breaks, these, I call them kind of empathy kind of sessions, which I think is starting to build a different level of trust and a different type of human interaction, and human empathy that you wouldn't normally get inside an office,
Yeah.
which I think is something that we can continue to build on as we then continue to apply that into our business environments and so on. So I'm seeing some good things happening here. It's going to take some time to continue to work that, depending on what culture you come from. I come from a very conservative, button-down, command and control culture. So these are breakthrough ideas for
Yeah.
many people that we work with, but I like what's happening. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're right at time, so Noah had to jump off, it looks like. But you bring up such a great point, which is this process, and when we're going into the virtual space, we can humanize the workplace a little more. And it can be a little bit more easy to do because we know that people are in a varied environment, or we know that we can have to be really purposeful in our connections and giving empathy. It's not just an assumed thing because you're sharing physical space with someone. And I think that's where we've given so much space to being a super buttoned up or setting really high expectations that nobody gets to, have an off day or have a rough day or something else that's distracting them. And that humanizing in the process is going to be a long-term, very valuable asset because we are able to bring our full selves into the workplace, and
Right.
that gives us space to be more creative, do better work, because we're not going through that whole filtering process in our head of, can I say that? Is that okay? Is that not okay? Right? To the
Mm-hmm.
extreme where we feel quite so judged or a lack of empathy around us.
Yeah, and I wanted to just remind you, you guys have brought up a number of key components here. Again, trust is so robust, it's so complex, but we wanted to help really focus in on this area of allowing the mistakes to happen, to Maxine's point, that is appropriate within the culture when a boundary is set, to be able to make sure what is not allowed and where are the spaces that it can be, to really shift and evolve your team culture. But also wanted to go back, and this is all interconnected to the ecosystem of being a remote leader, and the three components that we have been able to address already within this virtual leadership series is to focus on those outcomes, to be able to, by doing so, you're trusting the processes that are in place and that how individuals can reach the end result, which therefore allows for trust to each other. If you're continuing to leverage your technology in creative ways to build relationships and the connections, to have the empathy conversations, to be able to meet each other in a more humanistic way through technology. And then finally, set the clear expectations and the boundaries so that we understand what is expected of me, of where I have a little bit of wiggle room to potentially do an oopsie, or where is it that I really shouldn't and I need to make sure. So keeping this also in mind, that these are other daily actions that you can be taking as a remote leader to be able to cultivate and sustain trust for the long term within your team. So we are going to finish our series next week, next Wednesday, same time, to go over giving and receiving thoughtful feedback and really dive into this. What does it look like over a video camera or technology, and how to still be really effective of doing this, such a critical key component. And then as a reminder, we have ongoing courses within remoteleaderproject.com that are available right now for you and your team. And then please find us on LinkedIn, Allison St. John and Christina Rowe, be a part of the Remote Leader community, and let us know how we can help you moving forward.